You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Cricket Podcast. On today's show, we'll be reviewing New Zealand's demolition of England, who put one of their top 10 performances of 2021 on the board. I'm Ross Legg, and we are blessed with the presence of Maxwell Brown. Hello, Max.
Hello, Ross. Thank you very much. It's great to be here. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right, actually, mate. I'm all right. I'm feeling I've recovered now from my exploits at Edgbaston, so I'm feeling much better than I was.
How many pints was it in the end?
Far too many. I think at some point we must have lost count. But back to the show and not my alcoholism. Tomorrow we will be going live with a preview of the World Test Championship final between India and New Zealand. And we'll be going at some point in the evening. Check our Twitter at the Cricket Pod for more information. But we're going on our YouTube channel. But this show is all going to be focused around what went well, what went badly, and who was to blame, as well as what can be done in terms of England and New Zealand. Max, as always, let's start with a question. Is it true you threw a temper tantrum after getting out on Saturday?
Yes, that is absolutely true, Ross. I'm happy to admit that I behaved like an absolute child. And you would too, if you'd got out in the way that I did, because I was middling everything, and then I clothed a knee-high leg-side full toss to a man at mid-wicket. I think it hit my bat twice as well when I swung at it. So it was appalling. It was absolutely appalling. I mean, there was never a better chance for me to rack up three figures than there was, I think, on Saturday, and I just saw it all slip away.
Oh, so I used to be like that, Max, but now I've grown up, and
I thought I had.
Yeah, what can you talk me through the tantrum? Was it a helmet being thrown? Were you smashing a chair to bits? What was the?
Well, obviously my bat's lovely, so I treated that with a lot of respect, actually, and put that down calmly. But it was mostly the helmet. I ripped the helmet off, threw it on the floor, and then booted it across the field about 30 yards. Obviously the Euros had got into my system, so.
Well, that is one way to do it. And Max, you mentioned that you've got a great cricket bat, and that is because we are sponsored by Woodstock Cricket. If you need a cricket bat, go into the show notes, and there is a discount code that you can use for that. Couldn't recommend them any higher. The bats are absolutely brilliant, and that is backed up by the Cricketer magazine, who rated it number 1 and number 2 in their best bats in the UK. You should also like this video, subscribe to our channel, and follow us at the Cricket Pod on Twitter and Instagram. For those of you who have signed up to be a Patreon member or a YouTube channel membership, thank you ever so much. We really appreciate it. So shout outs to the likes of Sean, VJ, James, and Gopal, who have all done that recently. Max, let's get on with the show. So can we have a bit of a game summary for New Zealand versus England, please?
We sure can. Yes, England and New Zealand took to the field in Edgbaston in front of a healthy crowd and Ross. And that crowd needed all the creativity they could muster to maintain good spirits in the face of England's latest failure. On the back of refusing to participate in the final throws of the first test, New Zealand decided they would take matters into their own hands and ensure this one ended in a result. Winning the toss and batting, things started out fairly positively for England. Burns again in the runs, but the frail middle order soon reared its ugly head, and it was left to Dan Lawrence to salvage a reasonable first innings score alongside the diplodocus-lengthed tail that England had presented for the game. And in reply, New Zealand made a bit of a mockery of England's total and marched their way to being the first side to have 3 batters in their top 4, dismissed between scores of 80 and 82, which was a wonderful statistical quirk, which is a difficult word to get out of your mouth. And it was only a late fight back from England's bowlers that restricted New Zealand to a total that would actually allow them to bat for a second time, because as it was when England got their second chance, they completely collapsed like a wet flan. And the largest cheer of the day belonged to James Bracey's first Test match run at the 3rd attempt, with only the wagging tail avoiding the ignominy of an innings defeat, despite only conceding a deficit of 85 in in the first innings. So yeah, it was pretty bad, wasn't it, Ross?
Yeah, and I watched Will Young and Devon Conway bat for I think 5.5 hours. We didn't look like we were going to take their wicket at all, and it only took Devon Conway getting himself out to make that
Absolutely
breakthrough.
hooning one to deep square leg.
Yeah, it was really.
I assume he
quite
reacted
something.
like I did when he got out.
Yeah, he was like full head in the air, and you could see just like, don't lose your shit in front of this crowd. I just walked off, kind of just in a big old sulk, bless him, because yeah, another 3 figures were up for kind of what the man who is in the middle of a purple patch like no other purple patch, isn't he? Really, from kind of ODI cricket, T20 cricket to the kind of games he's playing at the moment and his double century. It's fantastic. Max, let's start team selection. I mean, as you mentioned, and I mentioned, I was there on Friday, and I was pretty devastated when I saw the New Zealand lineup because they'd made 6 changes to the side.
Mm.
No Kane Williamson, no Tim Southey, no BJ Watling, Mitchell Santner, Jameson, and the legend that is de Grandhomme. I mean, if you take out that out of any team, and I mean Santner, maybe not, but that is a depleted side. You're looking at a second. That's definitely a second team, maybe a third team for the New Zealand kind of put out. Is that about right?
I don't think that might be a little bit harsh. I mean, we had Trent Boult coming back in, who's one of their finest bowlers. They still had Neil Wagner, who's taken piles and piles of wickets for New Zealand. Matt Henry, who has played plenty of Test cricket before, and not had the best record, but clearly has a lot of ability, and was only really ended up falling out of the team because Carl Jameson came in and started being a freak. So they still had plenty there, and you're looking at you got Blundell, who came in for BJ Watling. He's going to be in the team for the foreseeable because obviously he's retiring. So I think calling it a second or third string is a little harsh, but certainly missing some big names. You think Kane Williamson is and Tim Southey would probably be the two, wouldn't you? That might have given England's fans and players a bit of hope that maybe maybe we could do something.
Well, I think what I found interesting about this is that they've just got a really. It's almost like the England white ball team is how I can compare this. They've got such a good unit. I mean, the New Zealand white ball team is amazing as well. They've managed to cultivate an environment where white ball cricket is just as good as their red ball cricket, which is pretty amazing. They might go one step further than what they did in the World Cup against India. Who knows? But what I really respect about it is that they can look to give players rest in a way in which their team stays competitive. They can galvanise competition within their ranks, and like the people stand up to be counted in that. Right, like Henry, for example, he's given himself a good chance of being in that side. Like there is a call to make. He might not make it, but there is a call to make now because he took 6 wickets in this match. And when you do that and come into the side and seize that opportunity, it's great to see. England, on the other hand, I mean, Max, there's supposed to be a big plan that we're not all privy to. And I mean, Nasser Hussain kind of ripped into the England batters, which was absolutely hilarious to watch and listen to. Do we think there is a big brain plan that we're not seeing? I mean, we used to be able to joke about Ed Smith coming up with this, but I'm not so sure anymore. I mean, is this the Joe Root and Chris Silverwood show, and we're rolling into Funny Town? What's going on?
So what, are we talking about the batting selections here, or
I think the whole team. I mean, the whole
just
team.
The general
here.
selection.
We had Ollie Stone came in for Racist Robinson, which I don't think that superhero name's going to catch on anytime soon. But there was no Jack Leach, which I think surprised quite a few people.
That was very puzzling from my point of view, especially given the sort of the preamble where they'd brought in Dom Bess into the squad. I mean, like, oh well, if we play a spinner, we need to have a spinner as a backup in case something goes wrong. So we're probably going to play Jack Leach, and then they didn't, and I mean, I forgave that against Lords because I think it made sense not to pick Jack Leach. Lords isn't traditionally particularly favourable to spin, and I think going with an all-seam attack there was fine. And also there was the aspect of having Robinson in there who can bat a bit to try and shorten the tail a bit. But I it didn't make any sense at Edgbaston. I mean, on the first hand, you've got it's a bit more spin friendly. It was quite a dry, flat pitch in the end as well. So you'd think that maybe you'd have a bit of an inside track on what you might be playing on, and then go, oh yeah, well maybe we'll play a spinner for that. But the thing that really confused me about that is the fact that we then played Ollie Stone and Mark Wood. If they'd brought in Overton, you'd be like, okay, they've done that. I don't agree with it, but they've done it because they want someone who can bat. But they've gone with a long tail anyway, and basically 4 bowlers who bowl 2 things.
Mm-hmm.
So it was perplexing.
It's a bit strange, and I think there's a real contrast that we can kind of highlight here. So New Zealand, their IPL players were involved. England's weren't, and they say they want to rest people. I mean, Joe Root as Red Bull captain has been sold down the river. COVID is bad enough, but when it comes to being England captain, he has not had a first team to choose from, because rightly so. I think players' welfare should come into it, but also England's squad planning has been pretty terrible. Like they're taking Chris Wokes for all the test matches and then just not playing him and then missing him. Like he would have been in the team today, right? He would be playing at his not today, at this test match at his home ground. Offers a bit with the bat, hit a century last year. He's Chris Wokes, like he'd be in the side. As you say, the spinner missing out. England not going with one, and I think because we're resting key players, it unbalances the squad a little bit, which caused no spinner. New Zealand tend to pick kind of established players from obviously New Zealand, from their kind of domestic setup, right? They're Devon Conway's come in. I think he's 29. Will Young's coming in playing his 2nd or 3rd Test match, and he's 28. We're giving Zach Frawley, James Bracey, kind of runs in the team, which is admirable, but is it the right thing to be doing? And as you say, we picked a pretty samey bowling lineup, whereas New Zealand challenged all round the park. They had the left arm in Wagner. They had a bit of pace, and they had some real discipline in that side. And they always have a medium pacer who goes for fuck all runs. It's very frustrating. What do you think about England's lineup? So you touched upon the batting lineup, Max. Where do you think we got that right, or where we got it wrong?
I think, you can't really just look at this in isolation. I think just there's a whole lot more around it that you kind of have to dig into. I mean, obviously we are missing Butler and Stokes. That's two huge players to not have in your lineup, and that goes back to the point about not picking the guys who were at the IPL. I don't mind that, to be honest. You can trust it with New Zealand, who did have some of those guys in, notably Bolt and Jamieson. Jamieson only played one of those games. Bolt kind of had to force his way into playing anyway because he saw his place on the line, it's just an absolutely ridiculous concept, I think, for him not to be in contention if he didn't play. But he took that into his own hands, and they're at a different kind of stage of what they're trying to get to, aren't they? We're sort of at the end of one long tour away, the IPL, the Sri Lanka tour, where there's been a lot of bubble stuff going on, and at the very beginning of the next bit. And this sort of series sits in somewhere that's not particularly key. So I don't mind them sitting this out and then coming back as we sort of ramp up for the India series and the Ashes, which I suppose is the pinnacle of the year, supposedly. So we're told. So I think comparing it on those grounds, it's sort of maybe not fair because there are two teams at different places in their cycle of cricket, I suppose. But what I don't quite get is just what the reasons are for the players that England have picked in the batting. I'm thinking here of probably mainly Zach Crawley, Dan Lawrence, and James Bracey. Right, so I've done a little bit of looking into some of the data, and there's an interesting piece on a blog called Red Bull Data, which kind of basically rated all the county cricketers and gave them sort of a weighted average which was based on the level they were playing at. So Division 2, Division 1 and the county championship, and then Test cricket, and then also weighted it slightly towards recent performances to account for like age impacts up to the end of 2019, which is around like the time that these guys are being picked. And so if you've got like there's two sort of clear distinctions really. You've got the likes of Sibley, Burns and Pope, who completely justified their decision based on the numbers. You know, they are performing far ahead basically of most other players in the county circuit, and you can see that just from the raw numbers. You don't need to look into that, like you dig into that too much more. And I think that sort of shows in, you know, Burns has played well, Pope has
Played well at the Oval.
looked good, but clearly has a sort of an issue, doesn't he, with the ball that nips back in, and that's the kind of thing where you think, all right, well, let's try and work on something, and you want to give them a bit of help to get there. But you know, you can see why they've been picked. That's what I'm getting at. When it comes to the other three, you've got like I think the one who, for me, looks the most like he has a place in the side and has some abilities, Dan Lawrence, and he sort of squeaks into the top 50 of this list. Obviously, there's a lot of overseas players and, you know, international players in there, so that's not too bad. Like he's clearly there or thereabouts, so that's fine. James Bracey doesn't really feature there because he's so young. You know, it's hard to tell. But I was confused about why he was picked, because we lost a genuine wicketkeeper and we brought in a batsman who kind of keeps a bit, but not much. If you're going to do that, just give Ollie Pope the gloves. Like he keeps probably as well as James Bracey, maybe better. I don't know. And then but yeah, that's by the by. The really weird one for me is
he couldn't have kept much with like watching Bracey, and when you're even on the TV. I mean, we were sitting watching Bracey keep in the stand, and the amount of times he'll just hit his glove and go on the floor. And I'm just like, I mean, the basic is just catching the ball here, mate. Like Max, you're a thoroughbred wicketkeeper. That must have been frustrating for you.
It was, it made me feel better about myself. I'll say that much. But it just didn't look right. Like his setup doesn't look right. I think it's sort of the wide stance he's got. It just makes him a little bit unbalanced when he's actually getting to the point of catching the ball. And I mean, apparently he's been like sort of taking inspiration from Ben Folkes and really trying to work on his wicket keeping and becoming a good wicket keeper, which is great. But more to be done there maybe. And unfortunately he didn't justify his inclusion on the batting, but he's had 3 goes at it. So and he's 23. So I don't think we can read much into it. It's Zach Crawley that really confuses me about his inclusion and why he was in there in the first place. Like, I mean, what I would say is that we're now a far cry from the days of England, the dark days of England trying someone for 5 minutes and jettisoning them into space and never hearing from them again. That's gone. And it's great that if they're going to decide someone can do it, that they're going to get a proper go at it. I just want to know why Zach Crawley was the one they chose. Like, based on the sort of this analysis I was looking at, he is so far down the pecking order. Like, we are behind familiarly overlooked names. We're talking James Hildreth, Sam Northeast, you got Ben Brown at Sussex. All of those performing way better over the last 5 years or so. You've got tried and tested names who've been discarded: David Milan, Gary Balance, Joe Denley, all performing way better. And then some other alternatives sort of around now. You've got some of the sort of mid-20s guys in like Sam Hain. There's Joe Clark, who obviously there was that thing, but
I'm not sure. I'm not sure he's going to
probably not now. And Will Rhodes as well, who can bowl. They could have picked him as a bowler instead of who bats, instead of having like James Bracey in there to bat 7, who bats at 3 and isn't that much of a keeper. Like, there's a lack of transparency for me. That's what I don't understand, and I think that's why it becomes quite difficult as like a fan or a pundit to make explanations for these things, because it's not that clear. Like, there's all this stuff about, you know, England's partnership with cricketers and all the data and things, and when you look at the data that's available to us, it doesn't add up. So you just like I don't know. I want to know why these things are happening.
And I agree on that front. So I mean, before the test match, we did a preview, right? And I looked at kind of Zach Crawley's stats. And I know you don't take out the 267 he scored, but his highest score in the last 12 innings is 17. Like, you're number 3. That means you might as well just go, do you know what? Don't bother batting, mate. Joe Root, in you come. Or just put Joe Root at 3. I know he doesn't want to do it, etc. But Jack Crawley is not fulfilling the role that he needs to for England. And there is a lot of people out there going, oh, Crawley's got a bit about him. Like, there's no way you smash the Pakistani bowling lineup all over the place. And the 50 that he scored, I think it was against South Africa. It's like, great, but there is a thing around form. There is a thing about confidence. And there just is a bit of, I agree with this, just that opaqueness to what is actually going on in this selection policy. I mean, when we've had Dan Weston on the show kind of talking about, England say they are a data-driven team and they supports it. I'm not sure what data they're using.
Well, that's it, isn't it?
Maybe it's like anonymized data, like on Pro Evolution Soccer where you had all the different names.
Yeah.
Maybe they've just done that and they're just trying to guess, is James Bracey actually John Borsey? I don't know. Which one are we trying to pick here?
This Oscar Pipe bloke looks good.
But I agree. It just doesn't seem to make sense. What we shouldn't diminish is how good New Zealand were.
Yeah.
I think we said at the top of the show that they made 6 changes, but actually that team looked brilliant. They were really disciplined with the bat and the ball. They got more out of the pitch than England did because of probably the variety that they had. They bowled a little bit fuller as well. And we talked on one of the previous podcasts about movement in the air versus movement off the pitch. And actually, they were getting both this time. They'd clearly gone away, done their homework, and be like, right, this is what we're trying to do. And they didn't drop a boatload of catches.
Yeah, they've got the highest percentage of slip catches taken in this World Test Championship. And I don't know if you have heard of any idioms or sort of sayings in cricket, Ross, that kind of give you an indication of what catches do to results.
Yeah, eat biscuits when you take wickets. That's what I kind of go for.
Something like that. That's why you're so trim these days.
Catches win matches, I believe, is what you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean that's it, isn't it? Like, I don't know if there are many numbers available on how many runs a drop costs you, but I would imagine that New Zealand are saving themselves a fair few with their bucket hands, and in comparison, England's slip catching is in the bottom half of the World Test Championship, and at that point, you're already you've given the other team a head start. Like, you are playing catch up. If you are dropping more catches than the other team, it stands to reason you then have to perform better everywhere else. And if we're not doing that,
you're having to take 24 wickets or 25 wickets in a test match.
And
especially on a flat pitch, right? There's some bits where England have come out and said we want to play on flatter pitches in England, so it prepares us for the Ashes, which is fine. But I mean, it's not gone well anyway. So I'm looking forward to the Ashes, but that's a conversation for another time. It's just to go back to like the bowling front on the kind of seam and swing. I thought that Broad actually applied himself, as he always does, relatively well. Anderson, not the Anderson we were kind of used to seeing. Looked a little bit tired, a little bit leggy. Mark Wood as well, kind of only a few days between the test matches, and comes back to your point again, why if you've got Ollie Stone, you might not well need
the way he bowled in that test is another. I mean, that's captain hindsight speaking, obviously. But the way he bowled just further serves to highlight the strange decision there was there to pick him, because he clearly didn't look like the same guy as he was at Lord's.
He was pretty good with the bat, though. Seeing Mark Wood on that morning rock back and play a late cut over gully deliberately, I was just like, who's turned up here?
Well, he had that little run, didn't he, in the World 50 over World Cup, or at least it was in the warm-ups, wasn't it, where he basically just came in and started smoking everything all over the park. So he's clearly got the eye for it, and applied himself pretty well in both innings, actually. It's giving some crucial runs from the point of view of face saving, I guess. Yeah.
I think what we can always guarantee for England is that when an opposition batsman turns up and he's a little bit out of form and searching for it, we will duly abide. Ross Taylor, again, got through a pretty anxious start. I think he ended up about 45 not out at the close of play. honestly, the atmosphere was it was baying for blood when you were in there, and just say every ball we were just like, how's this guy not out? But that is that grit, determination, yes, there's a bit of luck involved, but this is kind of 39, 38-year-old Ross Taylor who's been there, done it, thousands of runs, and literally looked in kind of fine fettle after that.
Yeah, I think we've got him another couple of years in the New Zealand side, and and he should be very grateful to us for that. He's one of those, like, you want him. He's the kind of guy you want to see him do well, don't you? He's the kind of guy on the opposition team, even though you want to win, you don't begrudge him a good innings, like someone like Pujara or none of the Australians, but. It's he did have a rough time of it to start with, and he battled through, and that's probably something that maybe some of the England boys could learn from. Like we do, like Sibley. To be fair, Sibley and Burns, they can clearly graft, but there is I don't know if it's a mentality thing, whether it's sort of an age thing. I don't know, but there does seem to be. It goes back a little bit, doesn't it, to the Bayliss days of England when the chips are down. Their response is not to try and grind through it; it's to waft at one outside off stump.
Yeah, and
we saw a bit of that again.
Yeah, we did. I think we were kind of reverted back to type. And I mean, even Dob Sibley, I think I was reading the BBC article, and he's only passed 16 twice in 11 innings, so that's not exactly a great run of form either. But as you say, at the top of the order, it is about seeing off the new ball. When you're playing the new ball, even on a flat pitch in the opening thing, it is difficult. And I thought Rory Burns and Dom Sibley did that very well in the first innings. After we won the toss, I mean, it's pretty embarrassing that we lost by an inning, or pretty much, well, by 8 wickets, but pretty much by an innings after that. You're a bit of a fan of stats, Max. And it's not the best stat in the world, but I did like how there was a bit of symmetry between Rory Burns and Dan Lawrence, who got 81 and 0 respectively, which I thought was quite nice.
Yeah.
The other stuff that I think we should touch upon is just knowing your game a little bit better. So Ross Taylor, yes, I think it's difficult to kind of say, oh, Ross Taylor knows his game inside and out, so it's okay.
But actually, the age of 38.
but England's players don't really know their game inside and out. And there is a bit around, you have to work it out as you're going, and your bit around, they're just wafting and getting out in the same way. It rang. I think your point around the Trevor Bayliss thing is really, really going to hit home. That is so true. And it's just that bit around, should we be giving people who are that like 28, 29, who've been round, they've been dropped, they've kind of gone through the tough times and actually know their game inside and out, the other chance? Or is it kind of, I'm not saying you need to bring back James Vince. I would love to see Gary Ballance back in the side because I love Gary Ballance. But do you know what I mean? Should there be you're on the train, you've got off at this station, you've got a car to the next one, and you're getting back on the England train? Like what is there that opportunity now, or is that gone?
I think perhaps if there was an opportunity for that, it might have been this series, because if you look at how young it was, we're looking at Rory Burns in his 20-odd tests being the second most experienced batsman in there, and like Ollie Pope being up there in like 23 or something, and it's and that's where you think maybe Mr. Trick of bringing in someone with a slightly older head who has sort of been there, and maybe they've had a go at Test cricket, realised that there's a thing that keeps getting them out, and done something to correct it, and has then performed really well back in county cricket. And if they were good enough to be picked in the first place, and then didn't do that well, went back, still scored loads of runs, why are they no longer good enough or no longer better than someone who actually doesn't perform as well as them in county cricket, who you've just decided, oh, he looks like he could do the part, let's give him a go. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe that's perhaps a trick missed. But with Stokes and Butler coming back, I would say we're probably back to looking at a younger head who might be a star for the future, to fit in around those guys with that experience, rather than one of the. I mean, it's David Milan's the name that's started popping up again, isn't it? Because he actually performed really well in that Ashes series when everything went horribly, horribly wrong, and he actually looked like he could play in Australia.
You can't gear up, right? You can't say every bit of your Test cricket is, because it's insulting to India, first and foremost. It's insulting to New Zealand, because they are both considerably better Test sides than England are.
Yep.
Regardless if we won that first Test match, they still are a better Test side than England. But you cannot go around saying Australia and the Ashes is the pinnacle down under. We're going to go and beat them down under. We're not at the moment, because we've got a bunch of inexperienced people playing. Like, playing on bouncy pitches in Australia is difficult. And even like there's someone like James Vince, as much as people say, oh, he just wafts outside, gets kind of caught out, he's also hit a boatload of runs in Australia, yes, in different format, but has also tried to go and do it, has proved that you go do it. David Milan, another one who has the experience of playing out there. I'm just always a little bit worried that it's always like the Boris Johnson thing, just 4 more weeks, or just 4 more weeks and it'll be fine. It's always that bit where you never quite promise it, and then just give us another few months, and we just never truly deliver. And that's been the case for kind of quite a few years now in the Red Bull game.
No, I agree. I think we are in danger of sleepwalking into the Ashes in a sort of stupor of 5-0 and Johnny Bairstow batting at 3.
Bring back, so when Johnny Bairstow's the answer to Red Bull cricket, there's a problem. Anyway, let's wrap this show up. So we've got some Twitter questions. So Max, first one from Looks Good on Paper. Who are your 4 bowlers for the Ashes this winter, Max?
Ooh, that's a tricky one.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, let's go. Let's assume everyone's fit to start with. We'll do that. So we'll go Archer straight.
Let's assume they're all injured. Darren Stevens, you're on the plane.
Yeah, Darren Stevens. Ricky Clark, he's doing well. Jofra Archer. I mean, obviously that's that's a shoe-in. And Jack Leach, I think we need
to play a spinner.
Needs spin, and it's probably going to be him. And then
that Max, that is the baffed thing around this as well. That they are saying we are gearing up to play against Australia. Nathan Lyon has taken his bowls. Is in every single Australian team. Before that, it was McGill, it was Ward, etc. Like, you have to play a spinner, and they're just like, we know better. Sorry, so
plenty
you got Leach
of
and
reasons. Leach and Archer. I'm going to go with Broad, because he didn't take that many wickets against New Zealand, but he bowled well. I think he was unlucky. He deserved more. And going to go Ollie Robinson.
Oh, so there's no place for Jimmy on the plane.
Jimmy's on the plane, but he's carrying the drinks in the first test.
Okay.
You gotta have a bit of controversy if you're going to answer a question like that.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear yours?
I think mine. I think you need to take that battery of fast bowlers. So I think Ollie Stone, Mark Wood, and Archer are all there vying for 1 or 2 spaces in there, depending on what the pitch looks like. I completely agree that we need a spinner that goes there. You can't take Dom Bess. I just don't think you could, like, it doesn't offer that control. He'll go all over the place.
Parkinson?
Based on cover. Parkinson is that option.
There's another man. There's another man who's like, you look at the raw numbers and you're just like, why has he not been given a go?
I don't think he's even in the limited over stuff against Sri Lanka. I think we're like, nah.
What if Adil Rashid's shoulder crumbles? What do we do?
Oh, Liam Dawson's the answer. So
we've got Livingston, I suppose, but
yeah. It'll be Archer, Leach. I don't think we should take Jimmy Anderson. I don't think he should be on the plane, and that's a ridiculous thing to say. But let's wrap him in cotton wool. Let's wheel him out in England and wheel him out in
for the home
friendly
Ashes.
condition. Yeah, and let him play till he's like 45. Get him to 1 million Test wickets. It'd be quite funny. And I was impressed with Ollie Robinson. But we need a. It kind of reminds me of Ryan Harris, actually, the kind of way, like hitting that kind of a Stuart Clark kind of bowling. So, I think we're probably agreed, Max, actually, with who we'd take. I do think England will be
fun, is it?
I do think England will be suckered into playing the fast bowlers. So I do think Mark would. So I do think someone like Broad might miss out on 1 or 2 of the games
because
they want to just go
At Perth, we are going Archer, Stone, and Wood, and it's going to be carnage.
England are all out for 39, and Australia are 700 for 4. Okay, so I think we've kind of answered that. Gopal has messaged in saying the England white ball setup led by Morgan credited New Zealand for changing their mindset pre-2019 for the World Cup. Why is it not being discussed that red ball cricket England can learn from New Zealand now? That's a pretty fair comment, I think.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think if you're a sporting team and you have ideas of becoming the best at something, you have to look at the teams who are better than you, and New Zealand are certainly one of those. So that's certainly a thing we need to look at. The question is that what aspects of New Zealand do you take on? Like, obviously their domestic setup is probably a bit smaller than England's. You would think, and I don't know a whole lot about it, but I do gather that they sort of went down a route of actually trying to prepare some sort of flatter decks for their players to bat on, to get sort of people into the test batting mindset of piling on loads of runs, and supposedly that's what we're doing, but only for the England team, and maybe not the county teams. I don't know, but it's have a little word with them. See, get some consultants in, see what they have to say.
Well, I'll see what I can do, Max. And then the third one, and I don't like to do this, Max, but we get some pretty angry people who interact with us on YouTube and on Twitter, and normally all for it. But we've got such an angry follower called Koufax, and I need to tell him to chill out.
Okay.
Like, he is badgering on about pitches, how England are the devil, and all this kind of stuff.
Who's talking about pitches?
So I was saying this one, saying how life is so unfair. England have said they are playing on flat pitches to try and get better for Australia, etc., which is fine. We, as a podcast, we are completely against bad pitches for Test cricket. Like, Test cricket lasting 2 days, awful. Test cricket lasting 5 days that ends in a horrendous draw where both teams are like 5 down
also
in each
awful.
innings, also awful. In this case, people have been talking about England and not the pitch because England were rubbish. We were bowled out for what? We set them a target of 40. Like, you can't then sit there and be like, "Oh, you're going to blame the pitch now?" No, we're going to blame the players, because they're the people who are to blame. This is a little bit different to when England got absolutely wiped out in Ahmedabad. Like, it's a completely different scenario. So channel that anger, and I mean this in a nice way, into stop raging on Twitter into something more productive, because it's getting annoying. Anyway, that's off my chest. And if you like that, let us know. There's a final bit of cricket news, and for us to point a bit of fun at the ECB. They've put their foot in it again, haven't they, Max?
Oh yeah, is this the pitch for the women's test?
Yes, it is.
That's an absolute disgrace. There aren't any other words for it, are there? It's embarrassing.
How can you sit there and go, right, the 100 is really important. One of the main benefits of the 100 is going to be the development of the women's game.
Yeah. So do you want to give a quick précis for the listeners, just in case they aren't up to speed with what's happened?
Absolutely. So England are going to play India in a one-off test match for this year. It's probably going to be the only test match they play. There's been rumblings of there being another test match, but highly unlikely. And they're going to play it at Bristol because there's a lack of grounds available. And there is a T20 game, I think the night before the test match at Bristol. And they haven't prepared a new wicket for the women to play on. So they're going to be batting on a used pitch in their only test match in the calendar year, after a year and a half, 2 years, where the women's game has been decimated because of the pandemic and the lack of investment. It's a fucking shambles.
Yeah. What's their excuse? Have they given one?
Lack of foresight, I think. It's
lack
just coming back to just be like, it was a mistake, we've made it, we're really, really sorry. Heather Knight was very diplomatic about it, and I saw Isabel Westbury's tweet about it, and I would not be that diplomatic.
Don't be diplomatic.
Yeah,
there's no room for diplomacy here. This is your own cricket board throwing you under the bus. Like, they've organised the game, which is great, because there isn't enough Test cricket in women's cricket. You get the one in the Ashes, which is it's a spectacle because it never bloody happens. And it was great to have the Indian team come over and play England. That's the other thing is you've agreed to play this game with the BCCI and got the Indian team to come over, and you're welcoming them, and you're saying, oh, by the way, we're playing on a pitch that was used in the blast last night. Sorry. What kind of image does that project as well to your visitors? It's unbelievable, and I don't for a second believe they didn't have enough time to try and work their way around it, because they've had several months you know, I mean, yeah, it was like a kind of a last minute thing that they put together, but it's not like they decided it last week. Yeah, they had plenty of time to say, oh, by the way, groundsman, can you prepare a pitch for this, because we want a nice, good quality pitch for this very important game of women's cricket, but no.
It's just embarrassing, and they need to have a long, hard look at themselves and then sort it out. Anyway, well, we've gone from saying that pitches aren't important to pitch has been really important in the space of 30 seconds, but that's what we do. A final reminder.
Cricket.
That is cricket, baby. A final reminder that we will be going live on YouTube tomorrow evening to preview the World Test Championship between India and New Zealand. Thank you ever so much for tuning in. We hope you've enjoyed it. You should leave a comment and criticise Koufax on our Twitter if that's your thing. Don't really do that. The bullying is not allowed. See you later.
Bye.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.